All right, all right, all right. How we doing out there, everybody? Schnoz Knows Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Schnoz, and we're going to do a Arch Manning deep dive. That scary subject that nobody wants to touch, but everybody seems to have an opinion on. But before we get into that, always appreciate the like and subscribe. If you could do us a solid there, we so much would appreciate that. So let's get into it. Let's just jump right in. Let's just jump in head first. Arch Manning, is there more of a polarizing topic in college football than having an opinion on Arch Manning? And it seems like there's only two things that people say. One, which I would say is the uninformed, just wants to say what everybody else says kind of thing. And that's fine. You can be that way. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to try to change your mind and maybe see some things that you didn't see before and go, oh, okay, if you still think he stinks, that's fine. But I think if you give this information a little bit of a, in your brain and kind of let it marinate for a minute, you might realize, okay, he makes some good points here. So check this out. Arch Manning, where do you start? All the hype last year, going to win the Heisman, going to be the number one pick in the draft, win a national championship, all these things. But yet he never started a college season before. He had a couple of starts the year before, had some plays where he had some packages mixed in that Sark had throughout the last season. But he wasn't a full-time starter until this past season in 2025. Oh, by the way, all the hype, everything that was just dumped on Texas, more or less. I don't want to say dumped on. Maybe that's not the right way to put it. Maybe undeservingly so. Now, the national media, they got just like anybody, they're trying to sell content. They're trying to make people watch, click on their stories, watch ESPN, Fox Sports, all the podcasts that you listen to. Everybody's trying to get you to get your attention. And what's the number one thing that just will grab it and just pull it in immediately? Arch Manning. Number one thing, just that quick. Because he plays for Texas, one of the most polarizing one of the most polarizing brands in all of college athletics. Love him or hate him, the Longhorn and Bevo is a recognizable brand. That being said, if we go back to the recruiting stage with Arch, let's just start there. What was the one thing that people were saying then? He's only being recruited because of his last name. He's giving all this because his last name's Manning. He didn't play anybody in high school. What is his competition? He's playing against a bunch of nobodies. Oh, Peyton Manning went there. Eli Manning went there. His two uncles. How'd they turn out in the NFL? How'd they look? Were they all right players? Odell Beckham Jr., he went to that high school. Probably made one of the most I don't even know what you want to call it, jaw-dropping catches in NFL history. Happened against my Cowboys, of course. Cowboys won that game, though, so don't forget that. OBJ would make that just in ridiculous reach all the way behind, snatched with one-hand catch. He played at that same high school that Arch did, but we didn't hear anything about them. Of course, obviously with Peyton and Eli, completely different world with the internet and recruiting and the emphasis and all the eyeballs that are on it now. Maybe things were said in those regards that they don't play anybody. But then when they get on the step, when they set on the college football field and they start making plays, well, all that goes out the window in a heartbeat. So Arch was recruited by everybody. That's the fact. There's not a head coach who was recruiting and telling his staff, hey, let's get this guy. And the ones he narrowed it down to were three teams, right? It was Texas, it was Alabama, and it was Georgia. If we eliminate Texas, we still have Georgia, we still have Alabama, and if we start there, who was the head coach of Alabama back then? Oh, yeah, some guy named Nick Saban, GOAT of college football coaching, all the championships, all the players drafted into the NFL from Alabama, just the dominance that he had as the head coach of the Crimson Tide. You think he knows what he's doing? You think his staff knows what they're doing? Do you think they just blindly went, hey, coach, hand him a piece of paper, and he was like, ooh, Manning, right? Oh, okay, yeah. I don't need to see tape. I don't need to see anything. I don't need to see any camp footage. I don't even need to talk to the guy. He doesn't even need to come here on a visit. Let's just sign him up. I don't need to see anything. I don't need nothing. Let's just blindly take him because his name is Manning. You think that Nick Saban, the GOAT of college football, is going to just risk everything for his team, everything he's built, all the time and effort that him and his assistants, all the effort and time that the players have put in. And he's just like, you know what, guys, we're going to make a quick announcement. We're going to just recruit this guy because of his last name. And regardless if he's any good or not, that's why we're taking him. Is everybody cool with that? Anybody got any issues? Yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody would have an issue with that, right? Wait, what? What are we doing? You think how that would go in staff meeting? Yeah, we're just going to recruit this kid regardless if he's any good or not. Really? So right there, if you think Arch is a bum, that's kind of like, the first crack in your argument. Who's the other coach that in that mix out of the 2 out of 3? Because obviously he ended up in Texas. Kirby Smart. Came from Nick Saban's staff. Been pretty successful at Georgia, last I checked. You think he was going to do the same thing? You think he sat down his whole team and his staff and said, yeah, y'all ever heard of Peyton Manning and Eli? Because young kids, they probably don't know who Archie is. That's it's way before their time, right? So there's no point in bringing him up. But if they just said, hey, Peyton Manning and Eli, this is their nephew, and we're going to recruit him blindly. He doesn't need to come to camp. He doesn't need to compete. We're just going to go ahead and bring him in here and make him the number 1 starter because his last name's Manning. Everybody cool with that? No, that's not how it's going to go. Again, if you're part of your process and your hatred for Arch Manning is, well, he only got recruited because of his last name. It's the only reason. So you really think that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart both fell for that and just went, yeah, I don't need to see anything. I don't need to see tape. I don't need to hear nothing. I just see a last name. I'm in, regardless. You think that? Come on, people. You're smarter than that. You can be a hater, but you're smarter than that. Okay, so let's fast forward to Arch gets recruited, goes to Texas, goes because he wants, somehow, some way, growing up and watching a lot of bad Longhorn football, he wanted to be a Texas Longhorn. And then Sark comes along, and his propensity for offensive football, it just seemed like a perfect fit for Arch Manning and his family. And they said, okay, let's go to Texas. So we go to Texas. Great. Woohoo. Everybody was happy. Everybody was shocked, myself included. I know I was surprised. You mean he's going to come here over Alabama and Georgia, teams that have won national championships recently and probably the best coach ever and maybe the hottest team in college football, Georgia, and what they were doing at the current moment back then? Oh, definitely came as a shock. So let's fast forward to the beginning of last year. And Arch is the starter against Ohio State. Did it look good? Nope. Did he have bad mechanics? Certainly. Could he have played better? I'm sure he would admit that 10 times out of 10. And all of a sudden, all the national media turned on him like that. He's a bum. He can't play. He's overrated. All these recruiting services just put him because of his last name. By the way, you do realize how much of a business the college football recruiting is, like high school recruiting going into college. You realize how many people are involved in that whole process and evaluating talent. You realize that's how people make a living, right? Like there's multiple channels and multiple websites that are specific teams, and that's how people pay their bills. That's how people put their kids through school. The whole recruiting industry. But they got it all wrong too. So Nick Saban has no clue. Georgia and Kirby Smart, no idea. And all these people recruiting, all those people have no idea. Because they just said, what the heck? We'll just save ourselves a lot of time and put Arch Manning at 1. Really? Come on, people. So anyways, back to where I was going. Arch starts, looks rough. Doesn't have a good game at all. Texas was still within winning. Not within. Texas, scratch that. Pause. I'm sorry. Texas was still within a moment towards the end of that game of tying that game. As bad as Arch Clayton is not, it's just, Texas was really hanging in that one. If Arch plays better, if the offense plays better, who knows? What happens if they win that game? The whole narrative flips from he's a bum, he's overrated, he can't do this, to, man, that Manning kid went in and first week at Horseshoe, defending national champ Ohio State, and comes out there with a W. Could you imagine? But no. Quick as they put him up, they tore him down. And he didn't play well. I'm not going to sit here and say he did, because he didn't. I watched the game. Trust me, it was not a good performance. But we got to remember some things. How many pre-snap penalties did Texas have last year? 39. Is that the quarterback's fault? Or is that the offensive line? Just saying. Quarterback can only do so much. The quarterback's getting up to the line, and his line is putting him in a bad situation. If you're going from a 3rd and 3, now you got a 10-yard penalty. Now it's 3rd and 13. Well, gee, you think that changes the dynamic of maybe where you're out on the field and what you want to do? Okay, we had this play called. We felt really good about it because we were close to midfield. We get a first down. Okay, cool. Keep the drive going. Maybe put some points on the board with the field goal. Now we're on the other our own side of the 50. Now we got 13 yards to go. We don't get it. Even if we get it and we're still short, we're not going to have to punt. So that kind of changes some things. Pre-snap penalties. Going from 3rd and 3 to 3rd and 13 is a big deal. So as I looked up last year, 4 new starters were on the offensive line last year. Texas had an offensive line that had played quite a few games for those past few seasons. Kelvin Banks was a top 10 pick at left tackle to the New Orleans Saints. Had a great rookie year. You don't replace guys like that and just not skip a beat. I always go back to these guys that I used to know. They were diehard OU fans. And Bradford won the Heisman in 2008, and they got to the national championship game, lost, as OU does in those games a lot in more recent memory. And their first game was at AT&T Stadium against BYU, team they were highly favored against. And I remember telling the friends of mine, I'm like, I don't know, man. Replacing 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, no matter how good you've recruited, offensive line's like one of those positions, man. You kind of have to build it and build that cohesion and that trust among each other. And then the quarterback as well. You don't just bring in, even if Arch Manning wasn't the quarterback, let's say Arch was a year younger than he is. And let's say you still have Quinn Ewers coming back. You still got 4 new starters. That's not ideal. So you got a brand new quarterback with 4 new offensive line starters. Is that going to help things? Is that going to make the quarterback's job easier? No. Of course not. So I looked at it, and I went through all these numbers. I watched every game, and I saw who the starting 5 was every game. It was Gooseby, who's probably going to be a first-round pick next year. Connor Stroh, who made his first start. He left the program in the portal, got benched halfway through the season. So that was your starting left guard. Cole Hudson was the first start of his career at center. He had mainly played guard, never played a game at center. Had played a lot of football at guard and filled in, maybe started some games. Never played center, never started at center. Now you're starting a brand new center. That's not good. Brandon Baker, highly recruited guy, 5-star out of California, never started. Even Gooseby, he played and started a couple years before, but he was a new starter. The only starter you had back was your right guard and DJ Campbell. And that starting 5 lasted, 5 games? Let me see here. Yeah. That started all the way to the 5th game against Florida. Mind you, there was a lot of underclassmen and guys getting playing time and rotating in because the offensive line was not good for Texas. They were not getting a push. The offensive line was not getting the running backs holes to run through. So the running game is suffering. Offensive line's not gelling and not playing as a complete unit. And they're getting a bunch of pre-snap penalties. Again, in what world has that helped the quarterback in any way, shape, or form? In what world are we going to sit here and blame the quarterback and say he's a bum? How many quarterbacks can be successful with all that against him? New starter, 4 new guys at offensive line, not good at pass protecting, not good at run blocking, pre-snap penalties. How are all these things helpful to a new quarterback? I don't know. I never played the position, but I'm pretty sure anybody that did at a decent level would probably say, you know what, that's not ideal. That's not good. That's not what you want your quarterback to walk into as a first-year starter. Yeah. Funny how that happens. So that Florida game, not good. They gave up 6 sacks to Florida. And Florida turned out to be not a good football team. That's what kept Texas out of the college football playoff. No ifs, ands, or buts. The only thing I would say about that, I still have this theory, and I do this here. So this is the Florida game early in the season. This is the Arkansas game late in the season. If we switch those and put Arkansas early in the season and the Florida game towards the end where they played Arkansas, I think that was like the week before Thanksgiving, before the A&M game. Arkansas was a horrible football team. Lost 10 games, 11 games in a row. Texas, despite their early struggles, probably wins that game no matter what. It's at home. It's in Austin. They probably win that. They go on the road. Things have gotten better by this point. The offensive line has kind of finally figured out a starting five. Arch is getting more comfortable. I'm pretty sure Texas can go to Florida late in the year and potentially win that football game. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. We'll never know. Just like Colt McCoy. If he doesn't get hurt in the Rose Bowl, he win. That's what any Texas fan will tell you. Bringing it back to last year, obviously. Connor Stroh gets benched in that game. True freshman Nick Brooks, who wasn't ready, replaces him at left guard. Ends up giving 6 sacks. You could literally watch that game against Florida and watch the guard, Brooks, 71. You could tell his head's swimming. He's not sure. He's not ready. He might be big and physical, size-wise, he looks ready. But mentally, the speed of the game it's just not there. He's not ready. Shouldn't be out there. But your team is playing so bad up front that Stroh, who I believe was maybe a redshirt junior, a redshirt sophomore. So a guy's been in your program a minimum of 3 years, is getting benched for a true freshman? That ain't good. And that Florida game went the way it went. And then obviously wasn't very good. After that, the starting five of Gooseby, Brooks, Hudson, Campbell Baker, that was your starting five for the next 3 games. OU, Kentucky, Mississippi State. And then Connor Robertson becomes your center. And then Hudson moves to left guard, which seems to be the problem. So we've gone from Stroh to Brooks to now Hudson at left guard. Just one position because it's been that bad. That kind of things got things a little bit more stable, a little slightly better ground that we're dealing with. And that was your starting five for the last 5 games against Vandy and Georgia, Arkansas, A&M, and Michigan. So, again, the reason I point this out is you don't have consistency among the offensive line. The left guard was a revolving door, and then you've had different lineups start because you can't figure out guard, and then even center was kind of a little bit of an issue. Until Robertson came in, that finally settled center a little bit, and then moved Hudson to guard, and that kind of settled guard a little bit. So that kind of moved things forward for Texas. They're still not killing it in the running game. They're still not playing just ultra perfect offensive line football, but it's been better than it was because it was pretty bad at the beginning. And you've got to look at that subjectively and realize that's a fact. That's not me pointing this out. That's just showing that guys were not good, got benched, rotation of guys putting in that offensive line because they weren't good. And I kind of put that on Sark and the staff. You saw this team through spring football, fall camp. You mean to tell me that these pre-snap penalties and not being able to block, because the Texas defense is pretty solid, you mean to tell me that offensive line group was just kicking butt and taking names all through practice? You definitely had to have some doubts in that because it was pretty obvious pretty quick. It's not like it just showed up 3-4 games of the season. It showed up immediately. So, again, Arch not having the best group in front of him. Interior guys finally figured things out with the offensive line. Hey, what do you know? His play goes up. Funny how that happens. So, oddly enough, Arch Manning's a bum, but he threw 26 touchdown passes to 7 interceptions. I mean, blind resume. If I tell you, hey, your first-year starter at quarterback is going to throw for 26 touchdowns, and he'll have 7 interceptions. Well, I think you take that ratio. And then, oh, by the way, how many games did he score a rushing touchdown? A handful. Towards the end of the season against A&M, ripped off, a 35-yard touchdown. Against Michigan, he 9 carries, 155 yards, and 2 touchdowns. One of those was a 60-yard TD. Getting more comfortable, feeling better about the situation, just feeling better about being the quarterback and in the offense in the situations that they were in. Again, out of the 7 interceptions that Arch threw, 5 came in the first 5 games. They played 13 games last year. So by my count, that means the remaining games, he only threw 2 interceptions the rest of the year. Gee, is that bad? I mean, last 6 games, you only throw 2 TDs, only 2 turnovers, and you're throwing 14 touchdowns? Does that guy, would you say that guy's a bum? Would you say that guy can't play? Would you say that guy's overrated? You tell me. Just look at the numbers. Take the name out of it. Just look at the numbers. 7 interceptions in the first 5 games. 5 of those happened. The rest of the season, only 2. So you go 5 games with 5 interceptions, and then the last 6, you only throw 2. So you cut down your interceptions, and then you throw 14 touchdowns. So at that point, before that, he had thrown 12 TDs. So you up the production by 2 in that same time frame. Again, would you say this guy is not improving? Would you say this guy is overrated? I think it's just because all the hype and all the just everything that got thrown around. And again, this is the national media. Texas and Arch and Steve Sarkisian weren't sitting there beating their chest like the Wolf of Wall Street, just saying, "Ugh," right? They weren't the ones saying all these things. It was being said about them. Did it turn out to be wrong? Yeah, in the beginning, it was. Maybe point the dirty end of the stick at the media. You put all the stock on a guy that wasn't ready for it, and despite all these things going into it, it seemed like you just kind of ignored all those things, like kind of damn the torpedoes. Who cares? None of these things matter. Just because of his last name. Doesn't matter if he's a brand new 4 out of 5 new starters. Doesn't matter if they get 39 pre-snap penalties. Now the mechanics and the bad throwing and all those things, again, those were Arch. But again, if you look at the numbers and you look how things went up and how they improved, interceptions went down, touchdowns went up, rushing touchdowns as well. So what am I missing here? Like, what am I missing here? I don't quite understand how. Again, if you got to look at the whole thing, you have to look at the entire season. It was stages. The beginning was rough. There was games against UTEP, San Jose State, and I'm just sitting there looking at the TV just going, bro, what is the deal? Why aren't they able to move the ball against these guys? Inconsistency be damned. This is Texas. You have a better roster top to bottom than both of those programs. You should be able to figure it out pretty quick. Maybe that's just a naive view of just a fan, but I got to think between budgets, recruiting, everything, anything that puts together a college football roster, that Texas roster should not struggle to put up points against teams like that. And then they kind of struggle on the road, obviously, against Florida. And then they bounce back against OU. And then dreaded game of Kentucky, where Arch, what was it, 132 yards passing, 44% completion percentage. That ain't going to get it done. They got bailed out by defense and special teams in that game. Kind of like they did against Mississippi State. Now, Arch had a little bit better numbers in that one. But both of those games on the road were not pretty. But at the end of the day, my favorite sports quote, you got it done on the road and you won. Was it pretty? No. Was it ugly? Yes. But I have this distinct thing that I remember. Because being a Longhorn fan, the Longhorns are new to the SEC. But I always heard all these things that were teams from SEC fan bases. Oh, man, week in and week out, it is just, you don't understand. The SEC is just such a grind. Every week's this. Every week is tough. Every game is hard. Okay, well, Texas struggles and wins some ugly games on the road. So does that sentiment not apply anymore? Because I heard that for years. Oh, Texas, you don't play anybody in the Big 12. All you got is OU. You got 2 tough games all year. Maybe you got a tough out of conference, and then look who else you play. Well, Arkansas lost 10 games last year in a row, maybe 11. They stunk. That's SEC. Just saying. Missouri wasn't exactly setting the world on fire. South Carolina, Lenore Sellers, they didn't exactly kill it. So teams have every conference. Here you go. Every conference has really good teams, middle of the pack teams, and bad teams. Arkansas is at the very bottom for a reason. They stink. Mississippi State towards the bottom, not very good. And then you got like your middle tier, right? Put whoever you want in there. You'd say Tennessee. Maybe you'd say you want to throw Texas in the middle tier. That's fine. Alabama. That's fine. Alabama still made the college football playoff. LSU, whoever. Oklahoma. So it just kind of puzzles me how I heard for all these years that the SEC is just so dominant, so hard, and so tough. And then Texas struggles and wins some ugly games. but Arch is overrated and recruiting just gave it to him and this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, what is it? Is it a tough conference and it's hard to win on the road week in and week out in that league? Or is all that just a bunch of nonsense that's just spewed by SEC fan bases to make themselves feel better about themselves sometimes? Because last I checked, I mean, LSU won a national championship and they lost, 2 games? They lost to Arkansas in the last conference game. They went to the SEC championship and ultimately the BCS championship. They lost 2 games. Still got to go. Why? Because they say the SEC was just that loaded and that top heavy and that tough and whatever. You know what I mean? So you can't have it both ways. You can't say Texas A&M is this, that, and the other, and then Texas beats them. But, A&M fan base kind of said, whatever. We're still going to the college football playoff, whatever. Well, yeah, you went undefeated, had one of the best seasons you had in years, thought you were really going to make some noise in the playoff. You lose to Texas in Austin again, and then you just throw an absolute dud in the playoff. Well, what happened? Does it matter or does it not? It's a rivalry game or it's not. It's a rivalry game. It's tough to win those games on the road, but you can't all of a sudden just throw it out the window and go, whatever. So you mean to tell me as an Aggie fan, Aggie alum, you're okay with losing to Texas again? All that's on the line. Lost at a chance to play for an SEC championship. Well, we're still in the CFP, so whatever. I'm pretty sure that's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. And if you're an Aggie fan and you believe that, that's fine. I'm just going to call you out on that. Never in a million years is an Aggie going to say, and really mean it, losing to Texas is not that big a deal. Losing a chance to play an SEC championship game, whatever. Really? Come on now. Let's be honest. Okay. So hopefully I made some points here that made some sense to you. Was Arch bad? Now, if we wrap this thing up, put a little pretty bow on it. Arch was bad in the beginning. Yes. You will not hear me say anything but that, because it was. The numbers weren't good. The mechanics weren't good. The throwing motion, everything was off. Getting booed at home. The Golden Child getting booed in Austin. Yes, it happened. All this media, all this stuff thrown on top of him. Wasn't asked by Arch, wasn't asked by Texas, or the whole program. It was all this was bestowed on them. And they you know what? They poo-pooed the bed, to keep it PG here. But they did. And that's part of the reason that held them back at the very end. Well, you lost to a bad Florida team, and you just didn't play good football for most of the year. You lost again. Now we're in this real world where we criticize wins, because obviously you lose to Florida, who's a bad team, ends up firing their coach, and it turned out to be a rough year for the Gators. But now you're winning tough games on the road, which I always heard SEC. Well, hey, it's hard to win week in and week out, and Texas does that back to back. But then no, now it gets bad against you. Now it's no, you can't. No, Texas. Well, you should have. Well, did you win the game or not? And ultimately, that game against Florida is what held them back. They had a chance to, they had a good chance to play Georgia at the end of the year, win that game. Period. End of story. No doubt, you're in. They didn't play good enough in that one again. Georgia's got their number. They got to figure that out. So yes, bad in the beginning. Lots of problems. Arch was part of the problem. So was the offensive line. So was the pre-snap penalties. Running game wasn't exactly set the world on fire either. You add all these things together, and whose shoulders did it fall on? Who was the one singular name that you heard that's just not getting it done? I don't hear anybody saying that offensive line was really having some issues. Now, some people that really know ball and watch it and saw it would tell you that. That's what I'm saying, because that's what I saw. But if you're just going with the, hey, Arch is a bum and he's this, that, and the other, that's fine. Hopefully you can look at this objectively and realize all the things I mentioned probably had something to play with it. And then, oh, by the way, the numbers did go up at the end of the year. Oh, by the way, he did show improvement. Numbers don't lie. You think I'm just a complete homer with all the stuff here I got on the wall, and I'm obviously a Longhorn guy? You can think all that all day long. The numbers will not lie to you. 26-7, 2 TDs in the last 6, or 2 interceptions in the last 6 games, 14 touchdowns. Is that good or bad? Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, entire recruiting industry got the wool pulled over their eyes just because of the last name. You really think so? I'm just saying. So that's it for this one. Thank you as always for tuning in. My name is Greg Schnoes, host of the Schnoes Knows podcast. As always, please like and subscribe. Do us a solid. We'd so much appreciate that. And I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.